Hello, magical experimenters. This is Taylor Elwood, and welcome to the show today, which is all about exploring timing and magic. And if you're someone who's new to this channel, feel free to click on subscribe, click the notification bell, and if you're someone who's a frequent flyer, feel free to leave a comment and a like. All right, so I thought I would talk about the topic of timing today in magic, and specifically the fact that if you look at Western occultism, one of the things that you'll see, depending on what your given path is that you're exploring, is you'll see a focus where a person might say, on such and such a time or in such and such a day, this is when you should do magic. So, for example, if you're doing magic on Mondays, then you're going to be working with the planetary influence of the moon. Or if it's Saturn, you'll be working with the Saturn energy, or a specific time of day where it might be okay from 12:10 to 1:10 in the afternoon. You're going to be working with, is the optimal time to work with Jupiter. And I think this has always been kind of an interesting question in terms of this. I would have to say that I have never really used timing in my magical work. Now, lately, I have been. I'm doing this in part because I'm going through this program of lessons that my magical partner has provided to me in relationship to some of the work that she's learned over the years. And so it's been interesting because I'm right now in this one lesson where I am doing specific magical workings on specific days. And I think it's been a good exercise for me because it's a way for me to kind of appreciate where a system has come from and where it's been structured and why things have been done a certain way. And yet I'll admit I still find myself thinking, this was really, and this isn't a comment on anyone or anything. But I'll admit that it's made me realize all over again why I've never really done the whole timing thing. But it also has gotten me thinking, well, why are there specific hours and days associated with a given thing? I mean, on the one hand, with the days, we can say, to some degree, this is arbitrary. We came up with the name of a day, Monday, Moon Day. Tuesday is going to be, the influence for, let's see here. What is Mars? Okay. Wednesday is Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, et cetera, et cetera. So you have these different days associated. And in that sense, maybe it's a useful way to tap into a given deity's energy. Then you have the hours, and really this is something that you can actually track astronomically. I mean, you do the calculations and stuff. You can actually figure out when a given planet is going to be, we'll say, closer or have some type of influence. But what is that influence? I mean, one of the things that I've thought about is the fact that, we talk about gravity as an example. Well, each of the planets has some gravitational pull. I mean, we live on the Earth, of course, there's that, but these other planets have a gravitational effect on our planet, on our Earth. Of course, we have the sun that does. But if you look, each planet has its own body of gravity, and each planet exerts itself on the other to some degree or another. So is this timing in part really influenced by the fact that a given planet's gravity might have a certain amount of effect upon us? We know this too, and if anyone's skeptical of this, we simply know this by the fact that our moon has an effect upon us. I mean, that's the most overt effect because the moon's the closest gravitational body, but that doesn't mean that the other planets don't. They may be a minimal gravitational effect, but it's something that if we're finely tuned to those gravitational tides and experiences, that could have an effect upon us. And, if you think all this sounds a little wonky, fair enough. I just share with you some thoughts that I idly think about and consider when I think about why does something have the effect it has? Why do we work in a given hour with a specific planet or something along those lines? But as I said, I've never I've never really relied upon planetary hours or days for doing magic. For example, if I'm going to do magic for communication or something else, I could wait until Wednesday and do it on the day that's associated with Mercury, or I could wait for the hour of Mercury. Alternately, I might just need to do it at 8:05 in the morning because things are going on, and well, you got to do what you got to do. Now, I will say that different magicians will also share, well, hey, there are ways around that. And let's say I can't wait until the hour of Mercury to do a specific working. Well, I can still draw in that influence, and I can work with it at a different hour. I might just have to compensate if another hour would be opposed to it. Okay, fair enough. Again, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that there's certainly some truth to that. I'll admit, I've never factored those things in that much with my magical working. And again, this isn't a knock on anyone or anything. This is just an observation, if you will. It's a realization that in some ways, depending on the given system or how a person practices magic, it really shows what weighs in on them, what is significant and why it's significant, and how that in and of itself can play a role in a person's magical work. So one person might say, I got to do things on the planetary hours, or I've got to compensate for this, and this is really important. And it is for them. And I wouldn't knock that for that person. I would just say, yeah, if that's what's important to you, then that's what's important. And that's okay. For somebody else like me, it may not be as important. Now, one of the things that I will say that I like to do in terms of figuring out the timing of something is really just more along the lines of what is the optimal time for me to be doing a given magical working? What's going to be most beneficial for me? When do I want this result to manifest? And if I'm going to work with a given influence or a number of influences, the thing that I like to do is I like to create as an initial base, a magical working that I do, which is the sphere of art, where what I do is I exclude the influences that I don't want, and I include the influences that I do want. So whatever I don't want is outside of the sphere, and whatever I do want is within the sphere. And the notion there really is that by excluding and including what you want, what you include is what you basically work with to guide and direct what is excluded, so that it then ends up helping you to create and manifest the result that you want. I didn't always work with the sphere of art, though. I mean, this has only been in the last few years, but even before that, I was doing magical workings at any time of the day, whenever it was most convenient for me, because that's when I could manage to get away with it. And if you work at a day job, you may not always have time to do a full-blown magical ritual during the day. You might have to do it in the evening. Or and again, some people could say, well, yeah, you're right, Taylor, that's true, but then I could just wait until the hour of whatever at this time. But what if that time is late at night and you need to be in bed because you're going to have to get up in the morning? Well, I mean, you could break up your sleep in a couple, sleep a little bit earlier and then wake up, do your ritual, and then go back to sleep. I mean, whatever you want to do. Or you can simply just do the magical ritual when it's convenient for you and see what happens. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. And I want to make that very clear, because I think that different strokes work for different people. And one thing that I've really discovered over the years is that what works for me may not work for someone else, and vice versa. And it doesn't make what each person does less valid or less potent. It just means that there's very specific context within which something works. And I think that acknowledging that and honoring that is a very helpful thing, because then that's also when, if someone feels like, hey, this person really has validated my path, but maybe there is something to this, then they can explore that. Whereas if you have someone come in and be like, well, this is what works and this is what doesn't, and they don't even give you a little bit of leeway, that makes it really hard to take in what they're saying, because the fact of the matter is you already feel invalidated by them. Why are you going to care? Not that really, I think even this approach of validating what one person does or doesn't do is what, again, it's not about that. It's really about be open to what you can learn from somebody, even when that seems to be against the grain of things that you normally do. I know, for example, as a result of doing this work right now, where what I'm doing is I'm focusing on timing, and this is just in regards to the days. I haven't even done the whole planetary hour thing, but just even focusing on the timing of when I do something on a given day, it's been kind of interesting. And I've asked myself, am I noticing a distinct difference on this day if I do this versus if I do something else on a different day? I don't know. I haven't really seen that, but that doesn't mean it's not valid. It just means that, again, it it points, I think, to the arbitrariness of correspondences and of systems. And I say this as much about my own arbitrary systems and approaches to things as to anyone else's, because I could tell you, like, I have my own arbitrary things about what does or doesn't work, and why. I think learning to flip between the arbitrary aspects of things can be very helpful. And this is a very chaos magic approach to things. I'm not a chaos magician, but it's one of the things that I picked up from them over the years, is knowing when to step outside of a given paradigm and flip it in such a way that you work with it in a way that makes sense for you, can be just as helpful and powerful as sticking with a given paradigm. So I think when it comes down to timing, try this as an exercise. Focus for like a couple weeks. Do your magical workings on specific days. Figure out what the correspondences for those days are, or come up with your own, but then do the magical workings then. And you can even do the same thing with hours if you want to, just to see what happens. And then on the days that you and then go and do those same workings on different days of the week, different hours, whatever, and see what happens. Worst comes to worst, you're going to come away with a better understanding of how magic works and how it works for you. So you can't lose. And I think that that's the most important thing to take away with any kind of system that you learn or work with. What can you do to test that system? What can you do to discover it? What can you do to change it? But also, like, figure out what really works for you and what doesn't work for you. All right. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.